Once again, good morning and welcome to Unlock the Power of Protective Factors with the Social Development Strategy with Chris Gabrielson. This presentation was prepared for the Great Lakes PTTC under a cooperative agreement from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, or SAMHSA. The opinions expressed in this webinar are the views of the speakers and do not reflect the official position of the Department of Health and Human Services. I have a few housekeeping items. If you have technical issues, please individually message me, Rebecca Buller, in the chat section at the bottom of your screen. If you have questions for our presenter today, please put those in the Q&A section and not in the chat. This helps us not lose them if the chat rolls by, and your questions are important to us. For captions, use your Zoom toolbar near the bottom of your screen and choose Live Transcript. AI note taker options, we ask that you do not activate that kind of application. We do not allow this for several reasons, and we will ask you to disengage. If you do not, we will remove you from the Zoom room. And certificates of attendance will be sent out via email to those who attended this session in full. And I want to turn things over to our presenter, Chris Gabrielson, who is the co-director of the Great Lakes Prevention Technology Transfer Center.
Thanks so much. Welcome, everybody. It's great to be here with you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And Rebecca, it's not letting me share sound now, which is, we just tested it out and now it's not letting me. So we might need to switch over in the video section just to give you a heads up. So I'll do it this way for now. All right. Well, welcome everybody to Building Protective Factors using the Social Development Strategy. It's great to have you here today. If you haven't already, go ahead and put in the chat where you're logging in from. It'd be great to see. It is fun to see where everybody is logging in from. So thank you. There's a bunch of you who have already done that. Folks from across the nation, as well as our Great Lakes region. So wonderful to have you all here today. All right, our path for today, we are going to take a deep dive into the social development strategy and really looking at how can we put it into action in order to build the protective factors within our communities, wherever we are working. We're going to do a little bit intro section on building the case of the social development strategy and the case for protective factors. Then we're going to move into the actual model, and then we will follow that and wrap up the session with putting it into action. If you haven't already, please know that you can log on to the product page for this webinar. And Rebecca's going to put the link in the chat for you if you haven't accessed that already, but she sent out an email to those who were registered as of yesterday with a link to that page where you can download the participant workbook. You can find that and use that as we're going through if you're wanting to be able to take notes in there. There are also the PowerPoint slides are on that page, and also the social development strategy assessment tool, which we will be talking about towards the end of the session. So if you haven't gone there yet, you might check that out and go to the right of the page. There are brown boxes where you can click to download those items. All right, and a little warning, I have some pop quizzes for you all today, so stay on your toes and be ready for those. We have 3 or 4 coming up your way at different parts during the session, so just in case you want to know ahead of time. All right, before we get too far into things, let's make sure we're all on the same page about what I mean when I'm saying prevention today. There are lots of different uses and definitions of the term prevention, so I want to make sure you understand what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the primary prevention definition of prevention. So in other fields, there's other fields use this as well. If we think about antivirus software, that's preventing viruses from getting onto your computer. It's not taking care of it after you're done, after your computer's already infected. It's preventing it before. Lighthouses, of course, lighthouses prevent shipwrecks before they ever happen. They aren't taking care of the ships after they've wrecked. It's to prevent it. Sunscreen is preventing the sunburns, and immunizations prevent the diseases. So it's the same type of thing that we're talking about in terms of substance misuse prevention, that we are looking at preventing the substance misuse before it ever happens. So we aren't into the overdose prevention. We aren't into the recovery part to relapse prevention. We are talking about the primary prevention for this webinar today. Not that those other things aren't important, and we need to do those things, but this is our focus for today. So, what is our goal for substance misuse prevention? Well, our goal is to put measures in place before there is a problem in order to do this primary prevention. So many of you probably are familiar with the public health parable. Some of you might not have heard it, but there's the parable of going on this beautiful day to go fishing, and you're having a relaxing, wonderful time, and then all of a sudden, there's somebody floating down the stream, screaming and needs help, needs to be rescued. So you go in and you rescue them, pull them out, take care of them, and then it keeps happening and happening, and more people are floating down and need to be rescued. Then all of a sudden it's like, well, wait a second. We can stay down here and we can keep rescuing these people, which is important, but let's pause and go upstream to see why people are ending up in the river in the first place. And that's what we're talking about with the substance misuse prevention, is going upriver, going upstream to see what's going on, to make changes upstream so that people don't end up in the river coming down. I see a heart floating up from the bottom. Thank you. Yeah, this is where my passion really is, because if we can prevent things from happening, we're saving time, energy, and the awful impact that happens to so many people, in terms of the whole system of folks and communities around us, when substance use disorders happen and substance misuse happens. All right, so with that in mind, then, how does that happen? How do we go upstream? We go upstream by reducing the risk factors that we know place people at risk or increase people's risk for substance misuse. And we increase the protective factors that buffer the impact of those risk factors. So we do both of those things. We're going to focus on the right-hand side today, the increased protective factors that buffer the impact of risk factors. I am going to be doing a webinar on risk factors in November. We'll talk about that a little more. So if you wanting to learn more about risk factors, we will talk about that at another time. But this is how we move upstream. This is if we go upstream, we're like, what's going on that's causing people to fall in the river? What risks are up there, and how can we increase the protection so people aren't falling in the river? So I'm going to pause here for a second and do a video, show you a video. I'm not going to do a video. And it's a really nice video that is a really good overview. And it's still not giving me an option to share sound, Rebecca. Any thoughts about why it's not letting me do that?
No idea. Would you like for me to share my screen?
Let me.
Because I
Yeah,
have the
sorry
video.
everybody. We tested this out before the session and it worked perfectly. And of course, um, let's see. Did you? Yeah, you stopped sharing. So yeah, it's not doing over. Okay, I'm gonna start sharing. We'll see everybody if you can hear. Oops, excuse me. I clicked on the wrong one that time.
It doesn't allow me to share sound either.
Okay. All right. Well, we will try this, and if not, the videos are not essential to this learning, so we can. Let's see. Rebecca, you let me know if you can hear or not.
I will.
A number of different factors.
We can
Some
hear.
biological or psychological. Others
Can folks hear well enough? I see some thumbs up. Can hear
Yes.
well enough? Okay, great. Okay, we'll go ahead. I'll go ahead and move forward, but I'll start it over. Thank you everyone for your patience. You would think by now that this would go flawlessly, but it just doesn't happen. All right.
A number of different factors, some biological or psychological, others social or environmental, give youth greater protection from or increased risk of substance use. Effective substance use prevention focuses on strengthening protective factors and reducing risk factors. Protective factors are the characteristics of individuals, families, or communities that support resilience, help youth more effectively manage stressful events, and strengthen other characteristics that minimize the risk of substance use. They can include things like participation in structured after school activities, supportive family relationships, and positive self esteem. Every youth is different, and the protective factors present in their lives can influence what messages are most effective in preventing substance use. Dig deeper into protective and risk factors for youth substance use prevention and how they can be used for messaging at thenationalcouncil.org/gettingcandid.
All right. Well, I'm glad that worked for folks to be able to see that. All right, we'll get back to the PowerPoint slides here. All right, so wrapping that idea up then, so protective factors, they create conditions for healthy youth development and well-being, and they buffer the effects of exposure to risk factors. Want to make sure to point out that protective factors are not simply the opposite or absence of risk factors. They are a separate entity in and of themselves. So just taking a list of risk factors and making them the opposite is not it's not necessarily a protective factor. So just wanted to make sure to point that out as we're talking about protective factors today. So when we talk about risk and protective factors, these are two things that we're looking at the same time in our work. So I would love to see in the chat, do you see in this picture a old woman or a young woman? What do you see in this picture? Amy says young woman. Many people see one young woman. All right, a few old, a few see both. Yeah, so it depends on how you are looking at this picture as to what you see. But both a young woman and an old woman are in this picture, just as risk and protective factors are. So let's make sure everybody can see both. I'm going to go ahead and block out part of it. So this is the young woman. If you haven't spotted her yet, right here is her ear. This is her perky little nose with her eyelashes. There's her hair with a feather coming out of her hair. And she's looking down over like that. Can everybody see her? Go ahead and put yes or no if you can or cannot see the young woman now. Or a thumbs up. I see we've got some thumbs up. Chris says you see your aunt. I love it. Okay, so I'm seeing lots of thumbs up. Anybody who can't see it yet, feel free to admit it because it's hard to sometimes if your brain is focused on one thing, it can be hard to switch to the other. All right, I'm seeing everybody. Okay, so let's turn to the older woman. I know a lot of people said they saw the young. So here's the older woman. The older woman's looking down like this. She has a very prominent chin. So this is her chin. These are her lips right here and a prominent nose right there. And then that's her eye. Okay, so, and she's looking down like that. I'm seeing lots of thumbs up now. Anybody having a problem seeing her still? Lots of thumbs up. Okay, good. I like to make sure, oops, and I didn't scroll. Oh, I'm sorry, a few people can't, I realized my chat wasn't all the, oh, some people are still saying no. Okay, so let's see. So right here, the black here, up here is her hair, and it's kind of curly at the top here. This is her eye. She has a kind of, so we're just seeing, it's like a profile of her. Profile looking down, there's her eye. And then here's a prominent nose. And then her lips, just a flat line for her lips. and then a prominent chin right there. Are people okay, so people are starting to see her down. Tilt your head slightly to the left and you might get to see her better, Wendy says. Oh yeah, Cynthia, I like the point that the young woman's choker necklace is the older lady's mouth. Good way to say that. Okay, yes, some people are getting ahas. Good. All right. Yes, very good. Okay, so we've got everybody. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to back up to this. So here's the full picture. And so depending on how we are looking at that picture is who we will see. We will see either a young woman or an old woman, or we can flip back and forth. What I would love for every substance misuse prevention professional to be able to do is to do the same thing with risk and protective factors. They are both a part of the picture, and we need to flip back and forth to make sure we're looking at both in order to see the full picture of what's going on in our community. So while I'm going to be talking about protective factors today, know that we also have to focus on risk factors in order to see the full picture. And again, you can catch that webinar in November if you're wanting to learn more about risk factors. All right, thank you for playing with me and figuring that out. So make sure everybody could see both of those pictures, both of those aspects of the picture. All right, and that's what I just said was for maximum effectiveness, we will do both. All right, and we are on to our first pop quiz of the session. Rebecca's going to pull up the poll. If you can't access the poll, sometimes depending on your device, feel free to put your answer in the chat if you would like to. But go ahead and answer the poll. Wait about 10 more seconds. All right, Rebecca, let's go ahead and share the results. All right, so this question, so protective factors can be defined as the absence of or counterpoint to risk factor. The answer is false. So again, it's not the absence of or the counterpoint or the opposite of, and it might be how I phrase this. I might have thrown some of you off. But it's an entity in and of itself. So they're two separate things. It's not just flipping the risk factors or the absence of. You can have both the risk factors there and the protective factors there to help buffer the impact. All right, thank you for participating in that first quiz for us, our session. Let's move into then, how do we build protective factors in youth? What do we do? So we know that this is important to do. We want to ensure that we have protective factors in our community and amongst our youth, for our youth. How do we do that? One way to do that is using the social development strategy. I have another video for you. This one's on the social development strategy that does a great job summarizing what it is. So let's go ahead and switch over to that.
The Social Development Strategy, or SDS, is an evidence-based framework for ensuring that youth feel connected to and bonded with their community. Research has shown that when we do this, we will see better outcomes and fewer problems for our youth. So, what does this look like? The Social Development Strategy is an easy-to-use strategy that works. There are 5 key components. 1, provide opportunities for youth. 2, teach young people skills for success. 3, provide praise and recognition. 4, bond with youth. 5, establish clear and healthy standards. When a young person becomes bonded, it motivates them to achieve healthy standards and promotes positive attachments. Communities that use the social development strategy have reported positive outcomes for youth. Specifically, when compared to communities without the social development strategy, these communities saw a greater percentage of youth who graduated high school on time, better economic outcomes for youths later in life, better mental health of youth in the transition to adulthood, and fewer teen pregnancies.
All right, and then that moves on to it was part of a program, so they start talking about their program at that point. So hopefully that's helpful in terms of being a broad overview, and we are going to take a deep dive into all of those pieces that they talked about in the video there. Switch back to my slides here.
Chris, we had a quick question.
Sure.
Does that imply that risk and protective factors are not opposites?
That is true. That's exactly right. Thank you for asking that question. I'm sorry I missed that came through. Yes, they are not necessarily just the opposites of one another. They're actually two separate entities. So as they looked at, for example, if they study a risk factor, I'm trying to think of a good example offhand. So what a risk factor that we know through research increases the likelihood of substance use is academic failure before 4th to 6th grade. So we know that if kids are failing in school at that time, by the time they get to 4th to 6th grade, that's going to increase the likelihood of substance misuse. We also, that does not mean that if kids are not failing in school by 4th to 6th grade, that it's a protective factor. That in and of itself is not a protective factor. Now, is that a good thing? Obviously, yes, and it's going to be related to other things, but that in and of itself is not a protective factor. There are different things that are happening that hopefully as we're going through this, you'll start to see that it's kind of it's a different set of things. It's a different there are different things happening in a kid's environment that creates that protection. So great question. All right, and so kind of related to that is the social development strategy, as I say on this slide, is a way that we can operationalize protective factors or create those protective factors. So besides just having the absence of the risk factors, how do we create protective factors? And social development strategy lets us do that. This is the social development strategy. I know that there are some other graphics for this that are prettier, to be honest, that they look nicer. But I like to use this one as we're really examining the different pieces of it to make sure people understand how each parts of the strategy relate to one another. So this is the graphic that we'll use for today. And we're gonna go through each part of these to show how they build on one another and what each section means. So before we get into each part of them, just a quick overview in terms of how this was developed. The social development strategy was developed by Drs. Hawkins and Catalano out of the Social Development Research Group at the University of Washington. They pulled from 3 developmental theories, including social control theory, Bandura's social learning theory, and the differential association theory. So for those of you who our fellow theory aficionados. Those are the 3 that they're pulling from for the social development strategy. It is research-based. They've done research on the social development strategy to ensure that it is an effective tool to increase protective factors, to operationalize protective factors. They've shown through research that it's effective across developmental stages. So in terms of with youth is what they've mostly studied, I think exclusively studied. So going through the developmental strategies through youth, it's also been shown to be effective across genders, race and ethnicity, and income levels. It's also been shown to have positive outcomes in terms of preventing childhood behavior problems, violence, substance misuse, alcohol misuse, and other problem behaviors that youth often experience. So some of you might be saying, well, but what about, there's lots of different protective factor frameworks, models out there. There are things like developmental assets, the 40 developmental assets, positive youth development model, resiliency, positive childhood experiences, lots of ways out there for us to look at protective factors. But what was interesting is a few years ago, 4 years ago or so, I was asked to do a training on 3 or 4 of the protective factor frameworks within one training. And I was like, first of all, I was like, Really? You want that in one training? But okay, yeah, let's look at this. And what was fascinating is then I've looked at the research behind each one of those, and the research that they pull from, not every model, but many of the models are all from the same sources. So if you go back to the sources of how these frameworks were developed, how the different models were developed, it's going back to the very similar, if not the same sources. So it's how that information was interpreted is how the different models were developed. So I found that fascinating and intriguing to know that we're really it's the different ways to operationalize the research that was done, the source research that these different frameworks were developed.
Chris,
So, yep,
we have a question. Can ACEs and counter ACEs be viewed as a framework, one of these frameworks that you're referring to?
yep. So the positive childhood experiences would be one of them that I'm referring to. Absolutely. Yep. And that's so when you're saying the counter to ACEs, that's people typically call them positive childhood experiences. All right. So why I prefer to use the social development strategy then is that it really boils down the essential elements to building protective factors. It's straightforward to implement. And you can do it in all kinds of contexts. So you can do it within schools, within families, within the community, within peer groups, within individuals. And it's taking all of these things and really boiling it down to, okay, why within these different frameworks do these frameworks work? The essential elements. And I believe that that's what the social development strategy does. And so it becomes kind of a one size fits all versus you not having to try to implement all these various frameworks. All right. And with that, any other questions, Rebecca, that you've seen that I have missed?
There was one question in the chat. It looks like when you talked about doing well in school, um, this person thought it was a protective factor. And does this example only apply to 4th through 6th grade? And so I'm not exactly sure. We might need more clarification, but that was in the chat.
Okay. And so I'm wondering, Larry, and I see it in the chat now, do you mind bringing that back up at the end? Because hopefully through how we talk about the social development strategy, you'll see that there are pieces that within the school environment, if we've created the protective factors through the social development strategy, that the school becomes that protective system can be for a child. So it's not necessarily the academic success in and of itself. It's what else is going on within that, which if there's academic success, it's very likely that there are protective factors that are present. But so there are some other things that need to go on that would be considered the protective factors. All right, Larry, thanks for hanging in there. All right, any others at this moment? Anybody else have any questions before I move on?
Not seeing any in the Q&A or in the chat.
All right, well, let's move along then. All right, so we are going to start at the bottom of this model with individual characteristics right here. So let's discuss this part for a little bit. So in the social development strategy, individual characteristics are considered these personalities and traits, such as a resilient temperament, sociability, and ability to learn quickly. So these are the kinds of things that that allow children to do and youth to learn things more quickly, to be more open to opportunities, to be more open to their environment, to respond more positively to their environment. For example, a sociability, with these kids who have that they're the ones that you go into a room and you immediately warm to them because they're the ones that are ready to jump in, they're ready to help, they're ready to, they're responsive to what you've asked of them, those kinds of things. So when they're sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied on this one. Let me start again. So with these things, I want to point out one thing before I go any farther, is these things can be learned. You can be born with them. That there are some kids, for example, I was with a group this weekend where there was a 6-month-old baby, and I walked into the room and the baby happened to just be facing towards me. The dad was holding him facing out towards me. And I was like, "Oh, hi." And he immediately started engaging me. And there's like the baby babble conversation and was just like, and his eyes were big and smiling. And so of course I immediately was just like, yeah, having a good old chat with him. And the interaction was very warm and fun and everything. So that child who is born in that way and is receiving that kind of nurturing in their environment is going to view the world very differently than a child that's very closed off and doesn't have that kind of interaction. Again, not that it can't be learned or that kids can't change, but that's just they're experiencing the same environment differently with that different type of temperament. So that's what we want to look at when we're talking about individual characteristics and the social development strategy, is the impact that these characteristics have in how they're experiencing their environment. And you're right, Katrinka, that parents encourage these characteristics when they provide secure attachment and belonging. That absolutely helps. So there can be a component of the nature piece, but then the nurture piece absolutely can have a big impact with that as well. Yep. All right. And so then why are these important? Because of that next part of the framework. So we're here at the bottom, individual characteristics, and the individual characteristics impact all three of these things. They impact how kids take opportunities, how they learn skills, and how they accept recognition. So let's take a deeper dive into these three pieces. And this will take a while to go through this part because this is where really the work as preventionists, this is what we're going to be mainly focused on, putting our attention in terms of how we build and structure our interactions with youth, how we build in our programs, the things that we're doing with our kids, of how we're presenting the opportunities, teaching the skills, providing the recognition, etc. So this is a big focal point for us as preventionists. So we need all three to happen with the social development strategy. We need opportunities, skills, and recognition to be happening. With opportunities, some things to keep in mind with opportunities is they need to be meaningful opportunities. So if you're providing an opportunity for youth to participate, for example, in a coalition meeting, is it going to be meaningful for them to sit through a 2-hour budget meeting? Perhaps not, right? That's not a very meaningful opportunity for most youth. If there's a youth who's interested in that piece, then yes, again, going back to the individual characteristics. So you want to make sure for those youth that are participating, for each youth, that they are receiving a meaningful opportunity. The opportunities are developmentally appropriate. So again, if you're providing an opportunity to, let's say, again, we'll go with the coalition mindset. So a lot of people are wanting to include youth on their coalitions. Let's say that there's an opportunity for public testimony on a new policy that's going to impact how the availability of alcohol within a community. Putting a third grader up to do public testimony is probably, again, back to the individual characteristics, probably not appropriate, versus perhaps a high schooler might be ready to take that on. Again, looking at this individual characteristics. As I already mentioned, match to the individual, that we want to make sure opportunities are matched to the individual to ensure they're meaningful and developmentally appropriate. And it's the right level of the Goldilocks level of opportunity, that it's pushing them to try something new, do something different, but not too scary that they will rebel and not want to participate. All right, so that's the opportunities piece. Skills. So we need opportunity, skills, and recognition. Let's go to the skills piece. We need to be sure that we are providing opportunities with with skills, because opportunity without skills creates frustration, just like us, right? If we're given an opportunity to do something, but we aren't given the skills to do it, we become frustrated as well, right? This is not just a youth-centric problem. And skills without boredom, again, similarly, skills without opportunity creates boredom. That's like, why am I learning these skills if I'm not doing anything with them? We want to make sure that with the skills, we are providing skills specific to that opportunity and give them the actual opportunity to use them. All right. So then a few more things with skills. You want to be realistic about what can be done, what skills can be learned. You want to break them into small steps in terms of, if go back to the public testimony. It's like, you don't just say, okay, yeah, go ahead and go do this. Say some things that will be meaningful. You're going to break into be realistic about what they can do, and break into small pieces about how to actually do this. So it can be sitting down with somebody who has experience with writing a public testimony and having them work with the youth to actually write out what it's going to be, make sure there's the timing, make sure there's the practicing piece, etc. So that it's making sure that the opportunities we give them the skills to be successful in that opportunity. Recognition is the third piece. So we have opportunity, skills, and recognition. Recognition is that you recognize them in terms of the context of social development strategy. You're recognizing them for the opportunities they take and the skills they are learning and using. So again, you've provided them with meaningful, developmentally appropriate Goldilocks level. You've given the skills, you've broken it down, you've modeled them, given them the chance of practice, and then you're saying, wow, in whatever way that recognition is going to be, but wow, you took that opportunity. I saw you did these different things with learning the skills. You practiced those skills, and then you actually participated in that opportunity. Few things to keep in mind when we're talking about recognition. One very important thing is make sure that they view that the recognition you're giving them is positive, not punishment. And I think of things like back to my younger son, who's now 19, but back in the days when he was in school, if he had been brought up like in front of the school to be recognized for something, he would have viewed that as the worst punishment you could possibly have. So like if he had done a good deed and was brought up, that would have been awful. Now my older son, pulling him up, he would have been like, yeah, great, okay. So if even within the same family, you can have totally opposite reactions to what somebody, an adult in charge, would view as recognition. So want to make sure they view it as positive. You want to be specific to the skill that they're learning. So we're getting like with that public testimony piece of you're saying specifically, hey, saw you worked on that, you created that outline, that was wonderful, and then we turned that into the speech, and then you practice the speech. You get the idea, I think. And then finally, just I think most of you know this, but in recognition piece, only focus on the positive at that time. So it's not, well, gosh, I saw you fail for a while, but then you finally figured it out. That kind of thing. We want to focus just on the positive when we're talking about recognition. All right. Okay. And I was just pulling up the Q&A. I see Troy has a question around, could you give more specific examples of specific skills we need to teach youth who are involved in prevention? And so, Troy, I'm wondering, what type of prevention work are you doing? Are you working in the schools, in the community? And so hopefully I can give an example that's more specific to what you're working at. See if that comes through. There we go. In the school. Okay, great. So so it could be that if you're teaching for example, refusal skills within your school, within the school environment, within the classrooms, that as you're teaching the skills, that you break down what has to happen in order to effectively refuse substances. So it would be, I'm trying to think of a specific action of, I'm not coming up with a good one, Troy. I'm sorry. But does that help in terms of if you're within the school that you're teaching, it could be specific to, for example, refusal skills, or it can be other things. And we're going to go through some examples. I think, are we on the next slide? Yes, the next slide. I'm going to go ahead and move to the next slide, Troy, and see if this helps. And if not, go ahead and post back in here again if I haven't answered your question. Because as a group, we are going to look at what opportunity, skills, and recognitions could be happening. So hopefully this will help. So I would love to see in the chat for you to put, describe what opportunities, skills, and recognition could be happening in this picture of what's going on. So it looks like this older gentleman is showing this younger youth something to do with tools. Looks like maybe an engine part. Something's going on. What kind of opportunities, skills, and questions do you have? I looked at questions in the chat. Opportunity, skills, and recognition in this. So I'm seeing teaching skills and competence. So specifically, what kind of skills could be being taught in this? Absolutely, opportunity to learn a skill, and what kind of skill could be learned in this one? What do we think? Mechanics, yes. Oakley says it. Yeah, fixing things, repairing, exactly. Future car skills, yes. So is this a substance misuse prevention directly? We aren't talking about refusal skills here, right? But it's looking at the opportunity to learn these skills around these repairing, mechanics, something, yeah. So basic life repair, something going on. Problem solving skills, absolutely, Dawn, are being taught within this. Yes. So opportunity is here to do this, which many youth probably don't have an opportunity like this. I know I didn't have an opportunity to do this. And the skills we talked about, what's going on here with skill development. What kind of recognition do you think that could be happening in this situation? We'll have to read into this, but what do you think could be happening in terms of the form of recognition? What do you think? Any thoughts? Praise for helping. So, yep, again, so could be verbal praising when doing things correctly. There we go, Ashley. Yep. So it's like, okay, I saw you use that new tool. Yep, that's exactly, you figured it out and you used it just right. Yeah, that was exactly. So you guys are getting the hang of it. Yep. Well done. All right. So what about in this instance? What opportunity, let's do it one by one with this one. What opportunity is being presented in this second picture? What's going on here? STEM learning, yep. So there's some STEM learning going on. Robotics, yep, exactly. It looks like Lego robotics to me. Not sure if it's actually Lego robotics, but something similar. Yep, and it could be coding, different things going on. Absolutely. So that's the opportunity happening. What kind of skill development could be going on with this? Which that goes on to coding. So we've got coding skills could be learned. What else is being learned? Collaboration and problem solving, physics, I love it, creativity, team building, yes, 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 yes. You guys have the hang of this. So this is opportunity that's being presented. It's these opportunities for skills to be built, hopefully developmentally appropriate, right? And step by step instructions to be able to have some good learning opportunities in terms of building those skills. All right, what kind of recognition could possibly be going on? Like failing forward. Yes, learning from when things don't work, how to move forward. Yes, Amy, I love that term. So recognition, what do you think? Any thoughts about what kind of recognition be going on? Yes, Laura, the robot actually works. Yes. What else could be going on? Positive, the the view of the face, or yeah, the facial expression is looking like she's a pretty positive kind of, kind of reading into this, but a positive kind of personality where she's giving them positive feedback. Yep, praising creativity and thinking outside the box. Yep. Scott says styler points. I'm not quite sure what that is. Is there a typo, or is styler a word that has to do with the robotics piece? Encouragement. Yep. But so again, going back to the specific, we want our recognition to be specific to the skills that are being learned. So be recognition of learning those new skills that we would be looking for in this situation for the social development strategies. Style points. Okay, great, Scott. All right, let's look at one more example, because I want to make sure this is real clear, and hopefully, Larry, this is helping with understanding what I was meaning by the skills piece. So we've got this last picture of two people, two young men, looks like probably playing soccer. What opportunity is being presented besides playing soccer, obviously? What other opportunities are being provided in this situation? Teamwork, yep, absolutely. Tolerance, yes. Collaboration, teamwork, persistence, sportsmanship, yep. Fitness, yeah, how to keep your body healthy, absolutely. You've got it. Pro-social activity, hard work, leadership can be, so there could be a lot of opportunities within this situation. Right. So what kind of skills could be taught in this situation besides soccer? Obviously, there'll be soccer skills, but what other skills could be taught? Yep. So motor skills, development of social skills. Yep. Communication, patience, discipline. Yes, yes, yes. Leadership, communication, how to handle loss. Yes. Tolerance, social skills, mental toughness, interpersonal skills. Yes. You've got the hang of it. Yep. All kinds of skills that could be taught. Now, what about recognition? What kind of recognition could be happening in this soccer teams? In terms of recognition of skills being learned. Win the game, that could be some recognition. Absolutely, winning does help. Being a team player, belonging, voting on most improved. So again, yeah, so this one's a little bit trickier because we've got our culture is like give everyone a trophy, give everyone, whatever. So the recognition for social development strategy needs to be specific to the skills being learned. So being able to give the recognition to specific skills that they have learned, like, and many of you are right on point, on leadership, being a good team player, supporting the team, fancy footwork. I love it. So it's specific to skills being learned. All right. Give me a thumbs up if people are feeling really comfortable about opportunity, skills, and recognition and what I mean by these. And if not, give me another, find some other. There we go. Lots of thumbs up. Good, 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 good. All right. Great. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on then to any questions. So I think.
We've got one in the question, in the Q&A from Dion,
Okay.
and it came from a while back, but do you see?
I think that, yeah, it was probably had to do with the individual characteristics. Sometimes presenting as warm and helpful could be less authentic.
It came in just after you gave us the baby scenario.
Okay. Yeah, you absolutely, Dion, it can be an unhealthy thing. But with this piece, what I'm trying to get at with the individual characteristics is how a child presents to its environment impacts how the environment responds to the individual, and also can limit or expand the opportunities that they will take, how they learn the new skills, how they take recognition. So you're right that it can be a dysfunctional kind of thing. People pleaser right here. Wait, I absolutely, it can be a very negative thing. So so it can, but that's not quite what I was trying to get at. Hopefully that clarified what I was meaning. And then Rebecca, I'm sorry, was there one more or not?
No, no,
Okay.
there's nothing else.
Okay, thank you. All right. So we're getting there. We're through individual characteristics. So we're gonna move into, well, let me move on to this one. We did individual characteristics. We talked about how they impact opportunity, skills, and recognition. Now let's talk about how opportunity, skills, and recognition impact and create that bonding, attachment, and commitment. So it's all three of those things together that we have to have in place to create a bond, a commitment, or attachment to, and it could be to a team, it could be to like a robotics, that example of the robotics team, it could be to a family unit, it could be to a youth group, et cetera, et cetera. But it's that bond is the key piece. And let's talk about that a little bit more. Oh, I'm jumped right back into this. So I'm going to go back for one more second. So with these three things, and I'm going to go back. Let's go back one more. I put a little heart right here because I feel like that's my addition to the social development strategy. You'll be impressed with my abilities there to add a graphic to it. But for me, it's a reminder that this is truly the heart of the social development strategy. That this is why we are doing all this work, is to with the considering individual characteristics and creating those opportunity, skills, and recognition, is to create that bonding, that commitment, and that attachment. And that's because of what's going on next, which we will cover really soon, the healthy beliefs and clear standards, because that is where we start getting our preventive effect. If a kid is not bonded, committed, or attached to a person, to a group, etc., they aren't going to care what healthy beliefs or clear standards are out there. It's only if they feel bonded, committed, or attached to those individuals, to the group, that they're going to care what healthy beliefs and clear standards are in that environment. So that's why I feel like it's really the heart of the social development strategy. So we are thinking about these three scenarios. We're going to go through these more quickly this time. But in this section, if the opportunity, skills and recognition are being presented, we talked about already. Who could this young youth be bonding to in this situation? With who? And this isn't a trick question. It could be. So what bonding's happening in this picture? So it's whoever this person is. If they're a parent, a mentor, a teacher, I'm not quite sure. In my mind, he's a grandpa. I'm not sure why. It's again, it's just in my mind who he is. But yeah, that's the bonding is happening between this gentleman and this youth, because it's the gentleman that's providing the opportunity, skills, and recognition. So that's where the bonding is going to happen, is between the two of them. All right, what about in this situation? Who are these youth getting bonded to in this situation? What's attachment, commitment within this situation? So again, it's this person, yep, the teacher, as well as they do get bonded to their teammates as well. Absolutely. You're right on the spot. Okay, what about in this picture? What bonding is happening in this picture? Coach, teammates. Yep, exactly. That's exactly who it's going to be in this situation. So that's where the opportunity, skills, and recognition are happening, are within the team. So that's where that bonding is going to occur, if those three things are present. Well done. All right, let's see how we're doing. Pop quiz number 2 coming up on a poll. How does bonding or attachment occur? Go ahead and take a moment to indicate the correct answer that you're thinking. About 40% of you. about 60%. Wait about 10 more seconds. Still coming in fast and furious. All right, let's go ahead and share the results, Rebecca. All right, so how does bonding, commitment, attachment occur? Nicely done. 80% of you had it correct. So by providing individuals with meaningful opportunity, skills, and recognition. Now, these other things can help on the side, but in terms of the social development strategy, the 3 key ingredients are opportunity, skills, and recognition. Well done, everyone. Okay. Any questions about that? If you answered it in a different way, you have a question about why your answer was not the one? And I see Cynthia put in the Q&A, STS can be used in grant writing as a rationale for purchasing team t-shirts and other promotional items that support the prevention projects. Oh, smart, Cynthia. I know a lot of people have challenges, being able to provide those kinds of things from with the funds that they receive. So brilliant. Nicely done. Okay. So get to the secret sauce. The secret sauce of the social development strategy is healthy beliefs and clear standards, or are healthy beliefs and clear standards. So let's take a little trip from the bottom to the top. Individual characteristics, impact, opportunity, skills, and recognition. Those 3 form the bonds. And that last piece, we have to be sure to get the secret sauce in there, because if we don't include this piece, this healthy beliefs and clear standards piece, we are missing our opportunity for the preventive impact, for the actual protective factors to do their work. So we have to be sure that in our work, we are clearly conveying our healthy beliefs and clear standards. So what do I mean by that? Here are some examples. Clear no use statements that, in terms of if you're going to be participating, especially if it's a high school or college age, depending on youth, but there'll be no substance misuse in any way. So no use of alcohol, tobacco, other drugs. Otherwise, you're off the team. You're not participating in the robotics team, etc. So we need clear no use statements are examples of healthy beliefs and clear standards. And a clearly communicated belief that substance use is harmful to youth is another example of a healthy belief and clear standard. So again, we want them to be developmentally appropriate. So, the younger kids, it could be the healthy beliefs and clear standards is more around that we need to take good care of our bodies, and what we put in our bodies can impact how healthy we are and how, and what we're able to accomplish. And then as we move into the older years, we're able to get more specific around the importance of not using substances. I see a question coming in. Okay. So with that, thinking about these healthy beliefs and clear standards, they have to be conveyed, as I say here on the slide, overtly, not assumed. So if you have a healthy belief and clear standard, not if you have, for the healthy belief or clear standard that you have, those have to be conveyed to the youth very clearly. So within a family system, I've been very clear around, until you're 21, you are not using alcohol in our house, or you should not be anywhere, no tobacco use. But we really talked about that and the reasons why I had that healthy belief and clear standard that I was conveying to my 2 boys. And I'm going to show this one. Another example is with this on the right is my son, Tommy, this was a couple of years ago that took this picture. And I got his permission to be able to share this story with you, just to let you know. But he was on the tennis team for high school. And I loved how one night When it was a Friday night, he was going to head out with some friends, and I did the old, where are you going? Who are you going to be with? What are you going to be doing? The asking all the questions. And finally, he just kind of sighed and turned around. He said, "Mom, I'm not going to do anything dumb. I'm not going to use any alcohol or other drugs because I'll be kicked off the tennis team, and I would not want that." And I was like, "Okay, thank you, coach, coach of the tennis team, for having created." He had created that bond that it was really important for Tommy to be participating in the tennis team. That was, he had been provided opportunities, skills, and recognition. There's that bond, that strong commitment, that strong attachment, and his coach had clearly conveyed to the teammates that if they were found to be using, they were kicked off the team. So that was that healthy belief, a very clear standard that was conveyed from the coach to the tennis team. Now, I was thinking there was another slide right next. Let's see if it's coming up. Yeah, so I'll go through. Let's stay on this track, and then I'm going to switch to a little bit different part.
Chris,
Yes.
just a quick question. What would be developmentally appropriate messaging for late teens and early 20s?
That is a great question. And I don't think I have a great example right off. I would love to see if there are folks who are working with college age students, what you're thinking would be some good examples of healthy beliefs and clear standards for that age. I haven't done a lot of work in that area, so I don't have something off the top of my head. Love to group source the answer for that. So if you work with the older teens or early 20s, put that in the chat. And if we don't have something by the end, I'll research it and we'll follow up with the email with that. All right. So with going back to our pictures here, what do you think? What could be conveyed with thinking about how old this younger person is? What could be conveyed by this person, this parent, teacher, grandpa, whoever we're going to call him, to this young, and I think she's probably a girl, but what could be conveyed around healthy beliefs and clear standards around substance misuse prevention types of things in this picture? What do you think? Not sure I phrased that well. Hopefully I did. All right, Jennifer, I love it. You have to take care of your body like we take care of the car. So take good care. I love it. Yep, and we have a couple of responses to the college piece there. Anything else? What other things? Using substances while doing this work. Oh, love that aspect, Chris. Using substances while doing this work can cause mistakes or injuries. Taking care of tools and using resources. Yep. Working with a clear mind is important with tools. Love it. Absolutely. So that's really specific to wanting to talk about laying the groundwork for the substance misuse prevention messages that we want to be sending. So well done. All right. What about in this instance? What could be conveyed in terms of healthy beliefs and clear standards for this age range? So a little bit older. I'm thinking middle school. So this is like elementary school on the left, middle school in the middle is my guess. Maybe late elementary, but let's call them middle school. What do you think? What healthy beliefs and clear standards could be conveyed in this setting by this mentor, teacher type person? We have healthy choices create healthy minds. I love it. A clear mind is required to participate in STEM. Yep. And then what would that mean? Yes. Zero use policy begins in middle schools. It can, and there's some challenges with zero use policies in terms of the punitive aspect of that. So we have to be careful around that and really think about how we want to make sure that's not impacting the positive pieces of the protective factors and creating that bond. Problem solving is critical skill in many aspects of life. Yep. So complex skills need our full brain capacity. So sticking with clear mind is important. I love you guys. You guys definitely have the hang of this. You all do. All right. What about this last piece with the soccer team? What kind of healthy beliefs or clear standards could be conveyed here? And I'm guessing high school age is what I'm thinking for this group, this team. What do you think? Any ideas? So again, it's what are we conveying that if you are going to be committed, bonded, attached, so you're going to stay a part of this soccer team, what are some clear standards of what you are doing that in order to stay on this team? Yep. So like poor choice is not being able to play. Yes, exactly. So what are some things again? That's what I was looking for, Laura. So alcohol can slow your mind and body. Keeping your body at peak readiness is key for our team. Yep. And so then what would be the clear standard around that? So because of that, will you be able to play at the next game if it's found that you had been using alcohol, or are you going to stay on the team, etc.? Yep. So again, thinking back to, it's similar to what I was talking about with my son's team with tennis. Um, team with tennis, his tennis team, of his coach having that very clear standard around any use is not tolerable, because that's not a part of who they were as a team, for all of these reasons that many of you are listing in terms of the impact of alcohol, tobacco, other drugs on your performance in a sport, as well as academics. And this coach had. All right, so let's think about what if healthy beliefs and clear standards are not conveyed. So I've seen this happen a lot, where there'll be things like alternative activities that are done with our youth and as preventive and in the spirit of substance misuse prevention activities. But if healthy beliefs and clear standards are not conveyed in those settings, then it doesn't have the preventive effect, that protective effect. And in some cases, for example, I know in one of our other school teams, I won't name names in case we have some local folks here, but the opposite was true, that there was that bonding, commitment, attachment had, but then the beliefs and standards were go party hard on Saturday because you've got time to recover before our next game the next week. So, and it was very much the culture of that team to party hard, et cetera, et cetera. So that actually can increase use versus having the protective effect that we are hoping to have through the social development strategy. So you can create all the wonderful bonding, but if you don't convey those healthy beliefs and clear standards, that we're missing out on the impact of the social development strategy. All right, and so one more time, we're building, building, building. And if we have conveyed healthy beliefs and clear standards, that's how we will get healthy behaviors. That's that top piece of the model. So that is it. We've gone through each step of the social development strategy. How are you feeling? Give me a thumbs up if you're feeling like this is clear. Got it. Hearts. I love hearts too. Love it. Okay. Great. People, and I love even some celebrations. I love it. Are you celebrating because we're getting close to the end of the webinar, or because hopefully not? All right. So let's go ahead and I already said this, but so any questions before we move on to our last pop quiz? Last pop quiz? Do I have one more?
Yes, you
Nope, two
do.
more.
You've got two more, and I don't see. Oh, we do have one in the chat. Can you speak more to zero tolerance and how that can undermine bonding?
You know what? I Rebecca, can you post the link to the what does not work document, the new one?
I will.
Because that has more explanation around that zero tolerance policy. So if that was your question, if you want to look at that document, that will provide you with the information and also the research that shows that. And I see Cynthia in the Q&A, you said that you're retired from mental health and recovery services board staff in January after a few decades in prevention. You're still working to convince folks of the importance of attachment and a sense of belonging as protective factors. The social development strategy, and that's when we're talking about moving into that next section of putting this into action, perhaps there are some things in there that will help you do some of that work, because it is hard. It's not easy to do, especially some folks who have set in their mind about what prevention is and what it is not. All right, so pop quiz number 3. Rebecca, if you can pull up the poll. So it's a wrap up of the social development strategy. What does it include? What are the key components? Okay, about 10 more seconds. We have about half the folks who have are done. All right. Just about, we're almost, most folks have done it. All right, go ahead. If you could go ahead and share the results, Rebecca. All right, love it. 79% of you got the correct answer. Individual characteristics, opportunity, skills, recognition, bonding, healthy beliefs, and clear standards are the components of the social development strategy. All right, so the resiliency, strengths-based approach, positive youth development are examples of other frameworks of prevention, protective factors. So that's, and resiliency, bonding, etc. That's also not quite the answer I was looking for. So well done, you all. All right, let's talk about how we put the social development strategy into action. So looking at what tools do we need to really grow our protective factors. I have one more video for you. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and get over to the video. All right.
So one of
And I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt fast. As you're watching this, if you want to jot down some notes, I want you to listen for examples of the social development strategy in action in terms of what she experienced in her life. I apologize, I meant to say that before we started.
the questions that I get asked pretty regularly, especially when I was younger, was how did you turn out okay? You had sort of a difficult upbringing, child impacted by substance use disorders. When I get asked this question, very simply, the answer is it's science. I mean, this is not a miracle. It is not magic. It was science and counterbalancing all of the risk factors that I came into life with protective factors. So if you think of it as a seesaw, I had a lot of risk factors on this side of it coming into this world and for about the first 10 years. But then there were things that happened, interventions and people that cared about me that counterbalanced that seesaw to put protective factors on the other side. So it not only leveled out, but it went in the opposite direction. And I think it's really important for us to remember that no child is unsavable, right? Regardless of the risks and the home life and the difficulties that our children are faced with because of
addiction because of substance use disorder, that we have the science and the tools to intervene and help to improve their outcomes. When we talk about why some people develop a substance use disorder and some people don't, I talk about the triangle, sort of the three main factors. And at the tip of the spear is genetics. We have about 50% of the individuals today that have a substance use disorder have a genetic predisposition, right? We pass this down to our loved ones, and you can't control that. But what you can do is know that you have a genetic load, that you have risk factors because of your genetic predisposition, like I do. So because of that, and knowing that I have 4 generations of addiction before me, I know that I have higher genetic risks than, let's say, my next door neighbor or my best friend. So I make choices that counterbalance that. So that's on that genetic side. And then on the other side of the triangle, you have environmental factors. It's about the community that you come from, the environment that you live in, things like poverty level, crime level, availability of substances in that community. And we know that there are interventions that can impact that, the norms that we create in communities. And then you have the individual side, right? That's things that are unique to me and unique to my family and my household. Parental monitoring, really clear expectations that are set forward, positive adult relationships, all these protective factors on the individual side that also have correlating risk factors. But how we address those, particularly for all the kids that are impacted by substance use disorder, is critically important. So I come back to that teeter-totter. I came in to this world with probably every risk factor that you can account for, both on the genetic side, the tip of the spear, the environment I lived in, and my individual factors. But I rebalanced that by the interventions, things like delaying the onset. I did not drink till I turned 21. And even till today at 41, I am very careful about alcohol consumption, intermittency, and being careful about my own use. Clear relationships. I had not only my grandparents and aunts and uncles that engaged as caring adults in my life, but was given a mentor through our county behavioral health services when I was just a kid that helped with another caring adult. Mental health care. I was court mandated to see a psychologist when I was 8 and continued that care to make sure that I had the mental health treatment that was necessary to deal with the trauma, the adverse childhood events, and those risk factors that needed to be addressed. We even know how to prevent this illness for those that have the most risk factors for developing this disease. And we just need to make sure that we're deploying them to every community.
All right. So I'd love to see in the chat some examples of parts of the social development strategy that she talked about in the video that she had in her life. Assigning a youth care peer is amazing protective factor. So again, so that's creating that bond, hopefully, with that peer. And if that a bond with healthy beliefs and clear standards being conveyed would be the key piece. Yep. There we go. Yep. Clear standards, good role models, mentors, relationships, extended family. So again, those things, therapy at a young age. I thought that was a key thing too. Yes, that's not specific to social development strategy, but I think that absolutely helped set her on the right trajectory. All right, you all picked up on a lot of great things in that video. I'm going to go ahead and share my slides one last time. All right, so just a reminder, we've been focused on the protective factor piece in this webinar. We have to do both, though. We have to both reduce risk factors and enhance protective factors in order to have the greatest success and to see the full picture and really take into account the whole picture, going back to the young lady, old lady picture. And we are having on November 13th from 10 to 11:30, we're having a risk factors training. So if you're wanting to learn about that other half of the picture, that's happening. And we also, when we're thinking about putting the social development strategy into action, it's really important that we think about how we can do this in multiple areas in our community. So especially if there are a lot of risk factors in the environment, We really need to up even more the amount of protective factors that we're building within that community, within our youth. So if we're working on a prevention program within a school, we can do that work within a school, but then are there partners that you could people you could partner with, organizations you can partner with to start doing that work in other areas of the community? So through parenting classes, if there are parenting classes that are being done, can the social development strategy be taught there? Within community youth opportunities, maybe the coaches association, if you have like we have the recreational, our city rec league with all the different sports, could that be taught to the coaches? So what are the different ways that you can create a comprehensive effort around implementing the social development strategy within your community? Because the bottom line is the more is better with protective factors. The more we can do this in all aspects of our youth lives, the much more likely it will have the preventive effect than going upstream with substance misuse. Another tool that is on the product page on our website that we had linked you all to is this social development strategy assessment tool. This is something that you can use if you like to take each strategy that you're implementing within your prevention program, within your prevention efforts, and really look at, are you truly including every component of the social development strategy, because each component is needed in order to create that preventive effect. So just wanted to point this out, that you can download this and use this as a way to assess how you're doing in terms of the social development strategy with your various prevention efforts. So that's another way to take action. Few other things to keep in mind as you're looking to put the social development strategy into action. One is to really talk with your leaders. Can you get your buy-in? I know that there was the comment, and I'm forgetting the name of the person who put in the Q&A, the challenge of getting people to understand these pieces, the importance of the bonding, commitment, attachment with healthy beliefs and clear standards being conveyed. So look at what can we do within our community to gain the buy-in from leaders. And I'm going to share a couple tools with you in just a moment. One thing, so another way is to train your program staff, coalition members, and volunteers in the social development strategy. And of course, apply the assessment tool that I just mentioned. So these are 3 things to help institutionalize the social development strategy within your community. Get your leadership buy-in, train folks, and apply the assessment tool. Oh, and I was thinking I had, so I just want to point out with the train piece, we have on our prevention learning portal, which I'll speak to in just a minute, um, a, a slide deck that you can use to download to be able to train others on the social development strategy. So that's something that you can access from our prevention learning portal on our website. Last pop quiz. Here we go. Rebecca, if you could go ahead and put up the poll. True or false? It is essential that we primarily focus our prevention efforts on increasing protective factors so we don't get caught in the negativity of risk factors. Gonna go about 10 more seconds. All right, let's go ahead and share the results. All right, the correct answer is false. And see, this is what happens by spending an hour and a half with you talking about protective factors, is I feel like I've convinced you that this is the way to go. You have to only focus on this. But no, we have, this is part of the picture, but we also have to work at reducing risk factors within our community. If we don't address the risk factors, then that makes our work in terms of trying to counter the effects of the risk factors going to be so much harder. So if we can both reduce the risk factors while increasing the protective factors, we're going to have much more likelihood that we'll be effective in that case. So it's not our primary focus. I would say it's an equal focus between risk and protective factors. All right. Couple more things here. So possible next steps, putting this into action. If you do something within the next 24 hours with this information we just talked about, it's going to be much more likely that you will retain the information that we've talked about today. So here's some ideas of things that you can do. You could have a water cooler chat with your colleague, be it in person or via virtual Zoom or something, about what you learned. You could examine the framework or list of protective factors that your organization or coalition uses to see if they're research-based. So if you don't already use the social development strategy, do you use something else and is it research-based? You can download that PowerPoint slide deck to conduct your own social development strategy. You could create a list of program staff, coalition members, volunteers, colleagues, etc., who you could get trained on the social development strategy and set a date. You could complete the assessment tool on at least one prevention strategy that you're doing. Or you could sign up for the risk factors training on November 13th. We're going to put in the chat a website address where I would love for you to put what you're committing to doing of those or something else within the next 24 hours to help put this information into action. So if you could go ahead and click on there and then indicate what you're planning on doing, that would be fantastic. If you want to put your name and email address, I will follow up with you to hear how it went with implementing that. You don't have to put your name and address if you don't want to. That's just if you want me to follow up with you. So go ahead and click on that website address, the tiny URL address that Rebecca put in the chat, and complete that form. All right. Few last thoughts as we're wrapping up the time here. Some upcoming events. If you have already taken the Foundations in Prevention Ethics training and want more training on our Prevention Code of Ethics, join us on November 7th for a deep dive into prevention ethics. I already mentioned the risk factors training. We will have another deep dive into prevention ethics on December 5th. And that's the focus on that one is going to be on considerations for fidelity and adaptation. I should have said the one in November is the focus is on engaging our partners in challenging discussions in an ethical manner. For those of you who experienced Brian Klaas's storytelling webinar before, we are bringing him back, and so many people requested a longer time with him, so we are doing that. We extended it to 2 hours. Highly, highly recommend attending this training. You know, if you give presentations to community members, to parents, to school school team members, to colleagues, etc. If you do any kind of presenting, highly recommend that you attend this training. And even if you've seen it before, I know every time I watch him, I have at least 3 pages of notes. Finally, if you are in Region 5 in the Great Lakes region, you can apply to participate in the virtual SAPS that's happening in January. Couple things to just on the horizon in February, and these are things for Region 5 only because we have a limited number of slots. We are going to do a virtual prevention core competencies training, and then we are going to start another round of the Learning Collaborative for Prevention certification. That's going to start in January through September. So if you are working on your prevention certification, becoming a certified prevention specialist, apply to participate in that. Hopefully in the next week, that's going to be open. I mentioned the Prevention Learning Portal. If you go here, click on this tile, Risk and Protective Factors, that's going to bring you to this page. And this is where, if you go down to the bottom, take action, there's that slide deck I talked about right there. So go explore our prevention portal and especially that page. If you haven't already, we'd love for you to like and follow us on LinkedIn and or Facebook, depending on what social media platform you use. This is the way we get information out to you every day. So we get lots of information that comes in, and this is the way that we can get it to you without spamming your inbox, your email inbox. And With that, one more thing, just a reminder that at the end of the session, when it closes out, you will be redirected to the GIFR evaluation form. I'd love to hear what worked well for you with this, and what if I did it differently, would have worked better. That's the way we help improve our offerings over time. So thank you, thank you, thank you, everyone. You were a great group, very involved and active in the chat and responding to everything. I know with webinars, it's not ideal in terms of our ability to interact, but you made it work. So thank you. And I look forward to hopefully seeing you at the risk factors training in November. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.